You are in a minority. Did you know that? I'm sure you did. But we've got some statistical evidence to prove it now. Some of you probably saw a few days ago that there was some research published by the Benedict XVI Centre for Religion and Society here in our diocese about the state of religious practice in England and Wales. So that's the focus. And as I say, if you are Catholic, which most of you are, and if you come to Mass each Sunday, which I know most of you do, you're in a minority. Now, I could spend the whole sermon on these fascinating statistics. I'll try and do it in 1 minute, okay, in case I get too geeky about it. 48% of adults in England and Wales profess to have no religious affiliation. None. The nuns. Not nuns, as in Sister Mary. 48% nuns, that would be quite something, wouldn't it? Okay, 48% no religion. Now, this is interesting. 14% of the population were brought up Catholic. So probably baptised. That's higher than I thought, and it didn't get much press, this. 14% of people you walk past in the streets are probably baptised Catholics. But 8% of the population identify as Catholics now. You put a microphone in front of them. What's your faith or religion or none? I am a Catholic. Only 8%. So we're in a minority as Catholics. Of those who are Catholic, who say they're Catholic, 28% go to Mass each week. 28%. About a quarter. So you're in the quarter of Catholics who are coming to Mass each week. And again, just think about that. Is that what you expected? Thinking of your Catholic friends and comparing it with religious practice back home, maybe. But then we dig down a bit, and this is where it gets really interesting. Page 7 or something. Of your age, so there's a bracket of 18 to 24. So that's most of you. 18 to 24, of all the professed Catholics, 14% go to weekly Mass. So if you're here at Mass, you're 1 in 7 of Catholics. Of all those who go to Mass, I'm going to stop now. Of all those who go to Mass, of young people 18 to 24 who are female, 4%. So 4% of practicing Catholics are young adult females. And here is the really interesting, the last one. Yeah, if you're male between 18 and 24, can I do a hands up here? If you're male age 18 to 24, yeah, you do not exist. Really, you do not exist. Meaning that in this sampling data that was used, that was very extensive, very well respected, you are too few to register on the arrow, on the scale, on the bar charts. You are, as a young practicing adult male Catholic, statistically insignificant. But really important to me, don't worry. Yes, I love you, but just statistically insignificant. Now, those are the facts. We'll stop the geekiness now. The question is, how do you react to them? How do we interpret them, and what does it mean? And now this is a psychological. How do you react psychologically? Emotions. You feel, oh, right, roll my sleeves up and fight. Do you feel, oh no, beleaguered and rejected and minoritied and oppressed and sidelined and what's gone wrong? Do you feel positive? Do you feel negative? This is all a psychological reaction, and we need to go beyond that to a theological reaction. In other words, how do we interpret this in the light of faith? To be a religious minority living and loving and practicing our faith. Well, first, obviously, look in the Scriptures. In the Old Testament, as we well know, the Jews were a minority religion in the ancient Near East. That great clash of empires with massive religious movements, they were a tiny sect, really, a little religion in a great continent of religions. In the New Testament, the Christians are a minority sect within Judaism. So we're part of Judaism there, in that nascent early church, but a group within, a minority, a tiny minority. And then when the Christians move out of the Jewish world into the wider Mediterranean Roman world, they are a minority sect within the religious pluralism of the Roman Empire. And in fact, they're treated not as a religious sect, they're treated as atheists, because they refuse to worship the gods of Rome and the gods, full stop. And just to take it to today's scriptures, to put it in a more focused context, if you like, St. Paul in the letter to Galatians today recalls his conversion. And he talks, in effect, of moving from the majority to the minority. He says before, as a Pharisee, he was firmly in the majority position, and he writes, "You must have heard of my career as a practicing Jew, how mercilessly I was in persecuting the Church of God, how much damage I did it, how I stood out among other Jews of my generation, and how enthusiastic I was for the traditions of my elders." Do you notice that phrase? I stood out among Jews of my generation. I was firmly in the centre of everything. And now I belong to Christ. Becoming a Christian means for St. Paul that he belongs now to a persecuted minority, and he will give, as we know, his life for this. But, and this is where the theology comes in, he doesn't see this as an accident or a mistake. He sees his new status as a special calling. He says, God has chosen me while I was still in my mother's womb. He's called me through grace, and he's chosen to reveal his Son in me so that I might preach the good news about him to the pagans. This isn't a mistake. This isn't because God has forgotten me. This isn't because God has not invented enough Christians yet. It's because, St. Paul says, I have a special mission to the world. And it's true in a different way in the gospel as well. The woman in Nain is an outsider. She's a woman, first of all, with no status in her own right. She has no status through a husband because she's a widow. Her only son, the male link into society, has just died. She is, in effect, an outcast. She's isolated and alone on the margins. And Jesus is with the crowds, isn't he? This is one of those great crowd scenes. He's standing with the majority, but seeing her, he steps out. He is moved with compassion, and then he takes the risk of touching the bier, the open coffin of the dead son. And it is a huge risk for him as a religious leader, because to touch the coffin makes him ritually unclean. He is cut off from Jewish society. He's cut off from society, full stop. So that this reaching out of Jesus is not just a story about love or compassion or his healing power, it's all of that. It's a story about the risks he would take to reach out to others, and how he is willing to sacrifice what is familiar and safe, his own status, in order to reach out and love others. Can you just apply all of this to yourselves, please? You don't need me to do it, really. We are a minority religion in the United Kingdom, and probably in most of your home countries. And we are a minority amongst our fellow Catholics for practicing our faith and coming to Mass each Sunday. That's the reality. But we must be careful in our reactions. to be careful of, as it were, a desire to belong, to fit in, a temptation to want more status or respect, the pressure maybe not from ourselves, from our own insecurities, but the pressure from others, from those we love, from family. And instead of giving in to that temptation, to see our status as a special calling, that like Paul, you have been chosen from before birth, that you have a special mission to bring Christ to others. And instead of thinking, oh, I wish I was in the centre of society, I wish I was respected and understood by everyone around me. In other words, if only I belonged to the majority, and it was safer and easier, instead of thinking that, to see where you are now as a gift, a calling, an opportunity, and actually a privilege. Because it means you have the opportunity humbly to share your faith and to bring it with others, and to have an influence that's different from, but just as important as the influence if you had more worldly status or power. All the biblical images that put this into focus, that you are light, the light that a candle gives to a room, it's tiny, but the light it gives to everything around it, that you are leaven, yeast, the smallest amount of yeast mixed into the dough that makes the whole loaf rise and become what it's meant to be. That you are salt that gives taste and flavour and that preserves and sustains everything that it touches, that it becomes part of. This is our vocation. It's not because something's gone wrong, it's because this is our calling. Like Jesus, we are called not to stay or to hide in the safety of the crowd, but to step out to help others and to witness. There is a cost and a sacrifice, and that's why we'd like a little bit more status and security. But we do it for love, and even at the cost of our lives. It was so moving to see this on Thursday night. Some of you were at King's for our confirmations and baptisms with Bishop John Sherrington, our university bishop. What a beautiful climax to our year of faith together as a chaplaincy. To see 3 of you, 3 young adults, baptised. To take the step that Paul is writing about in Galatians today. And to see with those 3, 10 others confirmed and renew their commitment to their faith as adults. Not hiding it under a bucket, but bringing it into the light. Pope Benedict talked about this. He spoke famously about a creative minority. And this is the sentence. He wrote, I would say that normally it is the creative minorities that determine the future. And in this sense, the Catholic Church must understand itself as a creative minority. That is what we are. It's a gift and it's a calling. And finally, not just a sermon here in Newman House at the end of the year, but for you to take this thought with you as you go home. Because for many of you, sadly, this is your last Sunday in London and your last Sunday at the chaplaincy. And not to give a long speech about what it means for you to take your faith home, but simply to encourage you to live your faith at home or wherever you're moving to, just as you have lived it here in London and at the chaplaincy. Your Catholic faith is such a gift for you, and I hope that you've grown to appreciate that more in your time in London this year. It's such a gift for you, but it's a gift that needs to be protected and treasured as well as appreciated. And for you to say as you go home or as you move on, whatever happens, I'm determined to find somewhere to live my faith at Mass each week, to go to confession regularly when I need to, and I'm sure you will, as we all do, to find some spiritual support and nourishment. Because if we don't grow our faith, it will shrink. And we need actually, especially you as young people, to work hard when we move somewhere to find something that will help us in our faith. And instead of going home or moving on and saying, oh, it's not the same as it was in London, it's really hard, there's no other young Catholics around, to really fight for your faith and say, if this is going to be important for me, I need to find something that will help me. I need to find a community. I need to find something to read and share. I need to find, really, other young people that I can live my faith with and that can encourage me in my faith journey. So that's it in a sentence. Yeah. Live your faith. It is such a gift. It has been such a blessing for you, just as you've been a blessing for the church and for others this year. But whatever you do, don't let this be the end of your faith journey. Let it be the beginning of your journey as you leave London and go forward.